Andrew and Emily had been together for 7 wonderful years, building a life filled with love, laughter, and unwavering support for each other. Both in their early 30s, they had found a balance between their personal ambitions and their relationship. Andrew worked in a well-respected position at a logistics company, a job he not only excelled at but genuinely enjoyed. His composed nature and dedication had earned him the admiration of his colleagues. Emily, on the other hand, had always dreamed of owning a flower shop. After they got married, she turned that dream into reality, pouring her heart and soul into her blossoming business. There was a time when Emily had playfully suggested that Andrew leave his job so they could run the flower shop together as a family business. But Andrew wasn't ready to walk away from a career he loved. They both understood and respected each other's aspirations, and life continued smoothly as they pursued their individual paths. One evening, Emily's parents came over for dinner. The house was filled with warmth and laughter, the table covered with an array of delicious dishes. Emily had been unusually cheerful all night, her eyes twinkling with excitement. Then, as the conversation quieted for a moment, she cleared her throat. "Mom, Dad, Andrew. I have some news," she said, her voice laced with emotion. She paused, taking a deep breath. "We're going to have a baby." For a split second, silence fell over the room. Then, all at once, cheers of joy erupted. Emily's mother broke into tears, overwhelmed with happiness. Andrew sat in stunned disbelief, struggling to process the words. They had been trying for so long, wondering if it would ever happen, and now, against all odds, their dream was coming true. It felt like a miracle. Over the next 9 months, Andrew was on cloud 9. He catered to Emily's every need, indulging her cravings and ensuring she was as comfortable as possible. Every kick, every scan, every little milestone filled him with joy. When their daughter was finally born, Andrew was given the honor of choosing her name. He held the tiny bundle in his arms, his heart swelling with a love deeper than anything he had ever known. "Lily," he whispered, deciding on the perfect name for their precious girl. Fatherhood transformed Andrew. After work, he would rush home, eager to relieve Emily from the exhausting demands of a newborn. He wanted to be as present as possible, making sure she never felt overwhelmed. Thanks to his support, Emily was able to continue running her flower shop without having to hand over too much control to others. In fact, every 6 months, Andrew insisted on sending Emily on a weekend getaway, a peaceful retreat where she could recharge, relax, and return home refreshed. Years passed, and Lily grew into a bright, affectionate little girl. When she turned 5, Emily surprised Andrew with another piece of unexpected news. She was pregnant again. The moment she held up the positive test, Andrew's face lit up with sheer joy. He had sometimes feared that their struggle to conceive Lily meant he might be infertile, despite his doctor's reassurances. But now, here it was, another miracle. "Maybe this time it'll be a boy," Emily teased, nudging him playfully. Andrew chuckled, wrapping his arms around her. "As long as the baby's healthy, that's all that matters." As her pregnancy progressed, Emily asked for an additional retreat, another short getaway to her favorite resort. It was unexpected, but Andrew was so overjoyed about the new baby that he didn't hesitate for a second. Anything to keep her happy and relaxed. She left for her trip, returning a week later with a slightly more pronounced baby bump, glowing with contentment. Around the same time, Andrew met a new client at work. His name was David, a sharply dressed man with an air of confidence and an unusual heart-shaped birthmark on his neck. When they first shook hands, Andrew couldn't help but notice the man's self-assured smirk. "So, you're the one I need to speak with about the upcoming shipping contract," David said smoothly. Andrew nodded, diving into the details. Their conversation was purely professional until, just as David was leaving, he suddenly turned back with an unexpected question. "Are you married?" Andrew was momentarily caught off guard. "Yes, happily," he answered with a slight frown. "I have a wife and a young daughter." David studied him for a moment, his smirk unwavering. "That's interesting," he said. "I have my reasons for asking." And with that, he walked away, leaving Andrew with a strange feeling in the pit of his stomach. Emily's pregnancy was more difficult this time. As her due date approached, she became increasingly irritable, snapping at Andrew over the smallest things. He did his best to be patient, reminding himself that the stress and hormones were taking their toll. Still, the tension in their home was undeniable. When the day of the birth finally arrived, Andrew was bursting with excitement. He had wanted to be in the delivery room, but Emily had adamantly refused, leading to a heated argument. In the middle of the night, she shook him awake, breathless. "It's time," she whispered. Rushing to the hospital, Andrew felt his heart pounding with anticipation. They had decided not to find out the baby's gender in advance, wanting it to be a surprise. If it was another girl, they would name her Polly. If it was a boy, he would be called Miles. The next morning, as Andrew paced the hospital halls, his phone vibrated with a message from Emily. He quickly unlocked it and was met with a picture of a tiny newborn swaddled in soft blankets. Beneath it, a simple message read, "Congratulations. We have another daughter." A wave of emotion crashed over him as he stared at the photo. Smiling widely, he showed it to Lily, who clapped her hands in delight. Their family had grown, and his heart felt fuller than ever. The next day, Andrew received an unexpected call from David. His voice was urgent. "There's something important I need to discuss with you. Can we meet today?" It was Andrew's day off, but he valued his professional relationships and agreed to the meeting. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop inside a nearby mall, where Andrew was already running errands for Emily and the new baby. When he arrived, David was already seated, waiting for him. "Hey, David," Andrew greeted, shaking his hand as he pulled out some paperwork. But before he could get started, David leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Andrew," he said in a low voice, "there's something you need to know." David leaned back in his chair, his sharp gaze drifting down to the shopping bags Andrew carried. With a casual smirk, he remarked, "Stocking up? Bet your wife and the new baby are expecting a lot from you." Andrew chuckled, pride shining in his eyes. "Yeah, my wife gave birth just 3 days ago. I'm just making sure they have everything they need." David nodded slowly, but there was something in his expression, something unreadable. "I know," he said. The words didn't register at first. Andrew blinked, his smile faltering. "What do you mean, you know?" Without breaking eye contact, David placed his phone on the table and slid it toward him. The screen displayed a text, one Andrew instantly recognized, down to the last word. "Congratulations. We have a daughter." The message was identical to the one he had received from Emily. Below it, the same photo of the newborn lay on the screen, a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. Andrew felt his stomach drop. His mind struggled to make sense of what he was seeing, but the implications hit him like a freight train. A chill crept up his spine. His breath came shallow. I don't understand," he muttered, his hands trembling as he stared at the phone. "Why do you have this? What are you showing me?" David exhaled slowly, his tone eerily composed. "Andrew," he said, meeting his gaze, "we're both adults here. You deserve the truth." A long, suffocating pause stretched between them. Then David spoke again, his voice even but firm. "This baby is mine. I don't think Emily told you." The world seemed to tilt beneath Andrew. Blood pounded in his ears. His fingers curled into fists, nails biting into his palms as nausea threatened to consume him. Without a word, he shot up from his seat, knocking the table sideways. The coffee sloshed over the rim of its cup, but he didn't notice. His hands clenched around his shopping bags as he stormed out of the cafe, his vision blurred with unshed tears. "No, this can't be true." His thoughts spiraled wildly as he hurried to his car. "Emily wouldn't do this to me. She wouldn't betray me like this. We've been so in love, so trusting. We built a life together." Yet the seed of doubt had already been planted, and it spread like wildfire through his mind. But he couldn't confront her. Not yet. He needed proof. He needed something undeniable. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his body stiff with tension. By morning, his decision was made. He would conduct a quiet DNA test. No accusations, no outbursts, just the truth. The next day, Andrew arrived at the hospital, a bouquet of fresh flowers clutched in his shaking hands. He forced a smile as the nurse handed him the tiny newborn, wrapped snugly in a soft pink blanket. His heart pounded as he cradled her, staring at her delicate features, searching desperately for something, anything, that tied her to him. He peeled back the blanket, then removed the tiny hat covering her head. And that's when he saw it, a small, heart-shaped birthmark on her neck. Exactly like David's. The room seemed to spin. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at the unmistakable mark. His fingers trembled as he turned to Emily, his voice barely above a whisper. "Emily," he said, his words unsteady. "What is this?" Emily's face paled. For a moment, she said nothing, then let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, I think my grandmother had something like that," she stammered. But Andrew's gaze locked onto hers, and in that moment she knew. The truth had been exposed. His voice sharpened. Why are you lying to me? Emily's bravado crumbled. Her shoulders slumped, and tears welled in her eyes. Then, as if a dam had broken, she began to sob. Through broken gasps, she confessed everything. She had met David at one of the retreats Andrew had sent her on. What began as a casual conversation soon escalated into something more. The affair had been brief, reckless, a moment of weakness she hadn't been able to undo. When she discovered she was pregnant, panic consumed her. She had considered an abortion, but then Andrew had looked at her with such joy, such unfiltered excitement about their second child. She couldn't bring herself to shatter that happiness. David had begged her to leave Andrew, promising her a life together. But there was one problem. He didn't want the responsibility of her older daughter, Lily. And so Emily stayed. Andrew listened in stunned silence, his fists clenching at his sides. Every word felt like a dagger to his chest, each revelation carving out another piece of his heart. Without another word, he turned and walked out. His first call was to David. His voice was eerily calm as he spoke. I'll be filing for divorce. You can come pick up Emily and her things whenever you want. Then he made a second call, to a lawyer. He wasn't going to lose Lily. A few years later, Andrew sold his apartment and moved to another city with his daughter, eager to start fresh. He built a new life, one where betrayal no longer lingered like a shadow. Emily, on the other hand, moved in with David. At first, things seemed stable, even hopeful. But as time passed, David's charming facade began to crack. His affection faded. The sweet words turned into cold commands. He criticized her constantly, her appearance, her choices, her mere existence. When their daughter cried at night, he ignored her, leaving Emily to tend to her alone. Then came the bruises. At first, they were subtle. A harsh grip on her arm. A shove when she tried to argue. Then they worsened. She hid them under long sleeves, behind forced smiles. But the isolation was worse. She had lost so many friends, so many pieces of herself, and there was no one left to turn to. And then one day David simply walked out. No explanation. No goodbyes. Emily was left alone with a child who barely knew her father, abandoned by the man she had thrown everything away for. It was only then, when the walls of her new life crumbled around her, that she truly understood what she had done. She had traded a stable, loving marriage for a fleeting infatuation. She had shattered the trust of a man who had given her everything. And now, in the end, she had nothing. Nothing but regret.